Welcome to the second section of this course on formulating a clear research question. So in the first section, you've got a general overview of what a research project is about, what is important to focus on, and how you should generally approach the major parts of a research project. Now in this section, we're going to get a little bit more practical, and I'm going to help you to turn your research question, or whatever idea you may have so far, into a clear research question that can actually be answered. The goal of this video is going to be to formulate your question in terms of cause and effect, and using clear, measurable concepts. Specifically, what we want to achieve is to formulate your research question in terms of one variable influencing another variable. In this general template, the first variable is always called the independent variable, and the second variable is always called the dependent variable, because the first variable is the variable that isn't influenced by anything in our research question, and the second variable is dependent on the independent variable. Alright, so let's go through an example. Now here's a bad example of a research question. What is the nature of depression? This is a very vague research question because what do we mean by the nature of depression? How do we measure nature? What is nature? It's very unclear. So a better version could be, what causes of depression is already a lot clearer, but still it could be a little bit better because causes are so vague and so general that it's still not clear why we should measure there. So a great example would be, does having more friends reduce depression? So now it's clear that it's about the relationship between friends and depression. And so we know that we need to measure how many friends the person has and how depressed a person is to answer this research question. Then another way to improve the original example, what is the nature of depression? Could be, what are the consequences of depression? And it's still not perfect because again, consequences are a very general concept and so nothing we could specifically measure. So a great example here would be, does depression impair intelligence? So now it's clear that it's about depression and about intelligence, and that we need to measure these two variables. And both of the great examples here follow the general template that you saw at the beginning. In the first example, we were wondering whether the number of friends has an influence on depression. So in that case, the number of friends were our independent variable, depression was our dependent variable. And in the second example, we were wondering whether depression has an influence on intelligence. So in that case, depression was our independent variable, and intelligence was our dependent variable. So these are already two examples of clear and testable research questions. Now let's go through another example, and let's use it as a bad example. What kind of social injustices are there in culture XY? This is very vague because what do we mean by social injustices? That's a very general category. So what exactly do we mean by that? So a better example would be a woman treated unfairly in culture XY. And this is already a little bit better because now it's clear that it's about women versus men. But it's still vague what we mean by unfair. What is unfair? That is something that we need to turn into something that is more objectively measurable. So a great example could be, our annual wage is lower for women compared to men in culture XY. So now it's clear that in order to answer this question, we need to measure the annual wages of men and women. And again, this follows the general template that you saw at the beginning. So here our independent variable is gender. We're comparing men to women. And the dependent variable is annual wage. And we're wondering whether the annual wage is influenced by whether a person is a man or a woman. Okay, let's go through another example. Another example of a bad research question could be, what should a business do? And that's very vague because, what should a business do in order to achieve what? To increase employee satisfaction, to increase sales, to become more durable. What is the goal here? So a better example could be, what increases sales of a business? And now it's clear that we need to measure sales, but it's still rather open-ended about the potential causes of sales increases. So a great example here could be, does strategy X lead to more sales compared to strategy Y? Now it's clear that we need to measure the sales achieved with strategy X and the sales achieved with strategy Y, and compare the two to each other. And again, this follows the general template. In this case, the independent variable is the strategy X versus strategy Y, and the dependent variable is the sales. And we're wondering whether the choice of strategy has any influence on sales. Okay, so the key lessons of this video are, formulate your research question in terms of cause and effect. And that essentially means that you want to formulate it in terms of an independent variable influencing a dependent variable. And you also want to make sure that you use clear measurable concepts so that for both the independent variable and the dependent variable is, at least in theory, clear how you could measure that in principle. Okay, so hopefully that gave you a general idea of how you can fine-tune your research question. And in the next video, we're going to make this even more specific by zooming in into how we define the variables. And I see you for that in the next video.